Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Mindfully Making a Difference. I'm your hostess, Dr. Rondell Hamilton, and I hope that today is a beautiful day for you. Somebody didn't wake up today, and so my heart goes out to anyone that's in the struggle, anyone that is mourning the loss of loved ones, anyone that's just still trying to figure it out from yesterday. I had some very interesting conversations since last I would have come before you, and I wanted to pose some questions to you all in the context of obviously sharing some knowledge, something that I hope will help someone. As you know, I'm just trying to mindfully make a difference in someone's life. If the messaging isn't for you, then you turn it off. But if it's something that helps, something that you think will help someone else, please share, please comment. Let's take these few moments to grow together, heal, if you will. So let's talk about something that's real heavy. Abuse is something that many of us can relate to, and sometimes abuse, as you heard me mention before, it's blind. Sometimes it can be blinding, and what I mean by that is my abuse happened right in the face of my other family members, and I have to believe they didn't catch it, because obviously they would have stopped it. But when I think back about it, it sickens me, because I just think about how tough it is being a child of abuse, number one, because a lot of times you are victim to someone who you believe is someone that loves you or cares about you. Maybe they do love you. But then they have some unhealthy practices, behaviors, and ways or issues that they haven't dealt with. And that exposes you to them in their unhealthy states. And then there becomes a conflict of how do you love someone that violates you? And then you have to grow up and still be in contact with them. Yeah, it's tough. This is Dr. Rondell Hamilton, and I am on today's episode of Mindfully Making a Difference, delving a little deeper, challenging you all to delve a little deeper into understanding this thing called trauma, unresolved trauma, and how mental health can be more than just about, what many of you make fun or poke fun at of being, crazy, or referencing, these insane people, or thinking that people need to be shut in. Just talking about some real life stuff. You've not been in or haven't had the opportunity to walk in someone else's shoes. You can't even imagine some of the horrors that people suppress or live through, overcome. Some people say, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and keep on going. Well, that may work for some, but not for all. Do we not live in a world where all should be able to have the opportunity to have a quality of life? If we raise the level of awareness, then maybe we can heighten the level of sensitivity. Because, coming from and being raised in Washington, D.C., a bullying town, yes, I said it, it can be really rough to admit to, certain realities. We were talking about abuse and looking at it from the eyes of a child who's been violated by someone who they trust. Now this child is growing up in an environment where they act out. And one of the things I just said is that my other family members, I have to believe that they didn't know. Because if they did, surely they would have put a stop to it, right? But can you imagine the hurt of having to continue to be around this person. And I can't imagine the adjustments that I would have had to make as a child, because as I told you, I totally had an out-of-body experience and totally suppressed a lot of that. And a lot of the memories that I speak from are memories that came back rushing to me at the age of 23. I kid you not. I have no reason to lie about this stuff. I promise you. There are many things I could be doing in my life right now in this moment, and I appreciate that the fact that you're taking the time out in this moment to listen. I speak because I'm hoping that my testimony will help to validate someone out there who's carrying some heavy stuff. It's heavy to look back and recognize that, you were abused as a child, but not even that, but it was a family member, and it's a beloved family member. And I can remember being in a relationship and having my mate at the time. I had casually mentioned, that we go through so much, and I thought that I was confiding in someone who was confiding in me. And, life happens. Fast forward, they decided to use that against me when they were angry with me. So they turned it into something awful and made it seem like it was something that I condoned or was down with, or, made me feel some kind of way about it. And that's why I do what I do, because it's important that we learn how to overcome the obstacles in our path. Not be afraid to speak up and talk about the things that may have hurt us. Because when you try to hold that stuff in, it harms you. There's research out there that supports it. We're killing ourselves sooner than we need to. We're going to leave here anyway, inevitably, right? Why do we need to help shorten the journey? Yeah, I know life gets rough, and I know it's so much easier just to withdraw or not speak about things because people are so judgmental, hurtful. But I need you to know something out there. You are much more than any trauma, any event, any exposed toxic understandings, anything that would make you feel some kind of way. You're much bigger than that, and it doesn't define you. And it took me a long time to learn that myself, I'll be honest with you. And for those of you that are wondering out there, have I made peace with or spoken with my perpetrator? Nope. I've made peace with it in my mind, because I don't really see the rationalization of where bringing it back up is going to change anything for me or my living. It's going to tear my family apart, because they already decided, it's not that big of a deal. But I just, I have to laugh at that to keep from crying, because it just makes no sense. In our family structures, we're supposed to be able to have safe havens. We just assume that the love or the support would be there unconditionally until something as major as incest shows up. And then if the matriarch of my family is no longer here, it's an interesting dynamic. But I just got one question. The adult version of myself would like to ask my dear relatives, because they do know about it. How would you feel, or what would your response have been if it was your female child? And as many of you know, my father used drugs through most of my teenage life. So, and then he worked he worked nights. He drove a cab, and I found myself being cared for by my grandmother. And so the reality of my reality is that rehashing all of that present day, to me, doesn't seem like I would get much relief from that. But I could be different from you. Everybody's journey, everybody's walk is different. For me, their therapy for me came when I could just repeat it out loud, hear it, and know that it doesn't define me. I was too young to be able to do anything about it. And for anyone to not understand that and to maliciously use information of that nature to try to harm me is not anyone that's supposed to be in my life anyway. See, that's just growth and maturity, but it takes us a while to get there. And it's so much easier to keep harmful people around you when you are not in control of you or yourself or your mind. And that's why I turn into drugs and alcohol and sex or gambling or shopping or just love in general, false love. Turn into something else to soothe you because you can't deal with the reality of what is your reality can be harmful. I do this Mindfully Making a Difference podcast because I want you to know you're not alone. You're just really not alone. And when people say mental health, it's about having preventative understandings. And preventative could be something simple as being, determined to talk out loud about the things that are bothering you and not holding them in. Having sounder practices. Making sure that you know if you're someone who doesn't handle rejection well, that you have a support system so that when the rejection happens, you can lean on people instead of losing it, destroying things, finding yourself behind bars because you didn't know how to discuss or emotionally release. This stuff is real. So let's say you are the abuser. Let's go on the other side of this because we can't always be victims, right? But then again, most abusers are victims of something. And I don't know if that's the case in the case of my abuser. So, I don't even know that I care. It just disappoints me that for the rest of my life, I have to deal with that situation from a long arm because it disappoints me that this individual, violated me. And I don't even care why. Like I said, so that maybe that's how I deal with it. The truth of the matter is I do this work because being a daughter of schizophrenia and knowing that my reality and watching my father deteriorate through his drug usage at a vulnerable time in my life, I just know it must be rough out there for our babies, bullying and abuse and incest and drug usage, alcoholism, domestic violence. I mean, there's a lot that our people out here have to navigate, and to find yourself having some sort of unsatisfactory reaction because of it, whether you're the perpetrator or the victim, it's just not a cool thing. Not a wonderful, it's not even a pleasant thing to have to deal with. I know, believe me, my households were in turmoil many a nights. In my background, my mother's sister took me and brought me to my father's family, my father's mother, when I was very young because my mother showed signs of mental instability as a young parent. As I told you, my mother had me at 15. My father was 18. I don't know if I told you that story or not. But I told you I would allow myself to be vulnerable enough to let you guys know that if you're not willing to go back and find out who you are and then being willing and strong enough to face who you are so that you can build and chart a stronger path moving forward and break the cycles or the chains that might bound you, then how can we help you heal? Everybody's story is ugly. I've had some folks share with me the reality of them being abused by their family members so much that they were prostituted out, or that they had repeated bonds of trust broken by family members that they truthfully never could imagine. These are realities for many of us, and if we don't learn how to process this information, it becomes a medical situation for many of us. And when it becomes a medical situation, it could take us out of here. Research, I taught you about SAMHSA and the research. Research supports that when we don't surround ourselves with a well-balanced. And what am I talking about when I say a well-balanced? Well, through SAMHSA's research, what they understand is that we need to have a well-balance of exposure of various wellness understandings. And let me give you an idea. Wellness understandings we need to have an understanding of our emotional balance, meaning that are we in control of that, our emotions? Where are we with that? Are we healthily practicing habits that keep us emotionally sound and stable? Our physical fitness. Are we partaking in events that keep us physical in our fitness and in our health? Occupationally, are we working and doing things that we like? Or are we constantly bound, stressed, arguing? Are we living unhealthily in our work balance in our life? And these are things that we should consciously be asking ourselves daily. Intellectually, are we growing? What are we partaking in that will help us to grow? Our mind, our behaviors, our habits. Are we set in our ways? Are we willing and open-minded enough to grow our minds intellectually? Are we immersing ourselves in other environments and circle of individuals that are positive to help grow our mind? Financially, what does our financial wellness look like? Are we balancing our finances properly? Are we helping others realistically? Are we preparing for tomorrow and our futures? Are we making sound decisions socially? And let me back up. Our financial realities could be that we don't have the reality to have a budget, and we don't know where food is going to come from tomorrow. And it's important to have boundaries, because if you are bound and these are your realities, who's your support mechanism? See, it always, makes me feel some kind of way when I hear people say, oh, I don't need nobody. Well, you don't need anybody until you do. And then when you find yourself being so closed off that you are not willing to reach out when you do find yourself needing somebody, these are those spaces and those moments that we talk about that can lead to toxic stress. And toxic stress many times can lead to depression, anxiety, and other understandings. And now we're talking unstable mental health realities. Yeah, it's a cycle. There are layers to it. And just as with everything else, there's a way that we can be preventative. And that's what the well-balanced living is all about. And so SAMHSA did a research and found that many of us, that when we're not living in well-balanced understandings, we will act out in ways that are not satisfactorily. We will find ourselves feeling as though we're not at our best, as though we're unhealthy, as though we may need to have some medicine prescribed, as though we may need to talk to somebody, as though we may not want to live anymore. It is important to understand our boundaries, understand when we are at our best, when we're at our weakest, and to have a life plan. And that's what we're talking about. What is your life plan for living healthier, whether you've been diagnosed with a mental illness or not? What are your red flag moments, and what do you do, and how do you handle them? What is the unresolved trauma that you're living with? Or are you someone who's never been hurt? And I hope that would be the case for all of us. This is Dr. Rhonda L. Hamilton, and I thank you. I thank you for tuning back in to our Mindfully Making a Difference podcast, where we talk about all things real. I've got some wonderful guests that I'm going to be bringing before you, who are willing to allow themselves to be vulnerable enough to share their experiences, in hopes that it will help you find yourself and your story in them. Speak out. There's power There's power in owning your story. Let's heal together on the Mindfully Making a Difference podcast. Talking about SAMHSA's research of the 8 dimensions of wellness. Did I mention spiritual wellness, social wellness, and environmental wellness? Can you imagine that all of that makes up our reality of a true, well-balanced living? And if you're like me, when I first came upon this information a few years back, I was astounded to realize, how much I was shortchanging myself. This is Dr. Rondell Hamilton, and we're talking about creating a balance so that we can deal with all of the wonderful and not so wonderful experiences that are our reality. I was talking about, so you're the abuser. Let's just say. It's not a pleasant thing, is it? And what's more disheartening is that many of you live in silence. How will you heal? Because it's not okay. As they say, hurt people hurt people. What is it that allows you to knowingly hurt someone else? Whether you're the one that is doing the repeated act of abuse to children every night, getting up, going in the room, getting in their bed or touching them or doing things you shouldn't do every morning, making them do things to you that you know they shouldn't be doing. I mean, really, let's talk about it. You have to know that these things are not okay. What are you going to do? What's your plan? Wellness consists of taking responsibility because there's a part of you that's hurting or that needs healing. And I guess you think you got away with it. But you know you're not getting away with it, right? If you're a God-fearing individual, you already know the requirement to repent and ask for forgiveness. Whoever your higher power is, I can't imagine that there is a civilized, spiritual acceptance of harming children or harming individuals. So, when we talk about being able to acknowledge needing help and creating sound practices for being able to receive help, we've got to be willing to look in that mirror that we talked about and to really make connection with who we are. SAMHSA has a manual that I swear by. Let's see what this is called. Creating a Healthier Life, a step-by-step guide to wellness. I wanted to give you the actual words in case you want to Google it. And then they have a subject, embracing support from others. Most of us know something that we do that makes us feel good about ourselves or in balance. It could be as different, as taking our dog for a walk or balancing our checkbook. And any step in that direction, such as finding a new walking route or gathering receipts from a purse, is positive. However, sometimes we may want advice from family and friends. That's okay too, and is where support from others comes in. Talking with someone who has been through similar things, whether it is a mental health issue, addiction, trauma, pain, issues, smoking, diabetes, bullying, or abuse, makes us feel less alone. When we realize others have had similar feelings and experiences and have been able to move forward and grow, it can give us the confidence to move forward too. With a support group, we can expect supportive input from people with a range of backgrounds who have experiences similar to ours. A chance to support others by our presence, compassion, our ideas, and empathy, and people who can suggest services or resources we may not have considered. We can find supportive people in many places: a community or church, synagogue, a mosque, a temple, a group, at work, through volunteering efforts, and those are just to name a few. Guys, this is the Mindfully Making a Difference podcast, and I'm Dr. Rhonda L. Hamilton, your hostess, and I'm mad this evening. That is, I'm mindfully trying to make a difference in someone's life out there. It's okay to lean on others. It's okay to look yourself in the mirror and to acknowledge that you need help and that you're not living your best life. I hope that by sharing some of my reality, it would help you to reach out and make connection with your reality. Because if you're someone out there who's holding on to hurt and knowingly hurting others, whether intentionally or otherwise, it's not okay. And today we're asking you to reach out. Whether you're local to where I am here in the Washington, D.C. area or not. That's the beautiful, beautiful thing of this virtual world, is that we can still reach out and connect to one another in times of need or support. Leave me a message. Let me know what you think. Tell me what you'd like me to talk about next, because this platform is where we talk about us. Whether it's ugly, beautiful, necessary, redundant, I'm going to keep on telling you. Mental health matters, and we're going to heal together. I thank you for tuning in again. I'm asking you to do the work. If you don't believe or take my word for it, Google Samson. Look up their Creating a Healthier Life Step-by-Step Wellness Guide. They have it online. You can follow along and hold me honest to the process. I welcome you to. Because see, when we know better, we're supposed to do better. And if we're talking about breaking cycles, I've got to be able to introduce conversations your way that are going to challenge you. And we know about that stigma, the disgrace of talking about mental health, don't we? We know that we thought we knew what it was. We thought it was everybody else but us. And don't you worry. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So there's so many layers and so much complexity to this subject matter that we're excited to come before you each and every time to bring a message that we hope that you'll benefit from. And remember, in abuse, there's always a victim, and then there's always the perpetrator. Are you the perpetrator out there? The first step is acknowledgement. We're trying to save lives. And all we're going to do is keep it 100 with you. Some people's reality is that they need doctors. Some people need pills. Some people need therapy. Some people need support groups. Some people need a combination of things. This is not a judgment zone. Your healing and your pathway to healing may not be identical to someone else's. What we want you to do is to realize the dangers of not being well. Our children are being raised in households and communities of unhealthy adults and unhealthy adult practices. When we know better, we're supposed to be able to do better. This is Dr. Rhonda L. Hamilton. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of the Mindfully Making a Difference podcast. Have a wonderful rest of your work week. Until we speak again. Look in that mirror. Are you the perpetrator? What are you going to do about it? Until next time, remember, mental health matters. Remember to mindfully make a difference in someone else's life, always. God bless.